One of my big takeaways from this last 2 weeks is, first of all, the heroism of our first responders. We had 70 water rescues in Virginia that saved lives. We had 2 tragic fatalities, but 70 rescues. And what our first responders do is extraordinary. And then to watch Virginians helping Virginians and Americans helping Americans is inspirational at a time when I think people look for the dark side of all of this, which is real. Lives lost, possessions lost, futures really, really damaged. But there's hope at the end of this, and we watch it happening as nonprofits and our local folks and our state folks and, of course, national resources really do move in order to support recovery.
So, Milton, this event basically is passed for Virginia?
Yeah, it appears, and I even took a brief early this morning yet again. Milton is fully expected to blow out into the Atlantic. And thank God, because it was devastating in Florida. I mean, over 3 million people without electricity this morning. And we were praying that it is light on Florida and blows out to sea.
We may talk a little bit about the election coming up. The way I'd frame it is you had a career in the private sector, and I think you have a pretty good feel, even in Virginia, for what works to try to grow the economy. Yeah. Can you, in your view, summarize what this election looks like?
Well, at the end of the day, the top issue by far, I mean, by a huge margin, is the economy. And the reality for Americans and Virginians is the last 3.5 years has been rough. There's been unprecedented inflation like we haven't seen in 40 years. And that has translated into real challenges where Virginians and Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Listen, over the last year, over 500,000 Americans have had to take on a second job in order to make ends meet. We still have not seen a return to the labor participation figures that we saw pre-pandemic, and we actually saw an employment increase. And so at the end of the day, this is about jobs, this is about economic confidence, and this is about Americans feeling like their government, and particularly their federal government, is going to deliver for them. One of the real observations that folks have to have is we have seen about 10 states driving the entire U.S. economy. We have winning states and losing states. And the reality is we need the whole country to be driving forward, not just 10 states driving the entire U.S. economy and job growth. And that translates into the need for manufacturing to be returned into job growth. That translates back into Americans feeling like they can earn a living and pay for the basics, groceries and gas and their electric bill and rent and a mortgage. And to date, Americans are saying very clearly that what they've experienced during the Biden-Harris administration is the exact opposite. And that's why the economy is the #1 issue on the ballot.
Over the last year, the Biden administration would say we finally started seeing real wages grow, stock markets hitting highs, GDP, we probably recovered fast. I mean, the United States should recover faster. We always have from the pandemic, from the financial crisis or whatever. But you'd hear they're selling hard now on that Bidenomics worked. And that, unemployment's good. We're going to have a soft landing. The Fed orchestrated, brought inflation down. I mean, they have things that they think they can sell at this point.
Well, first of all, we can't tell Americans to ignore what they've seen and felt. And that's what the Biden-Harris administration has been trying to do. Don't acknowledge the fact that you're living paycheck to paycheck because it's really better than you think. And listen, for the hardworking Americans, they have not seen real wage increases. And during the Trump administration, they saw 15% wage increases. And hardworking Americans understand that clearly. And as a result, no matter what they try to tell people they should feel, the reality is their wallets are stretched, they're struggling to make ends meet, and that is the reality for voters in Virginia and America.
For the programs that we're seeing proposed by Vice President Harris or former President Trump, I mean, there's a lot of giveaways in terms of tax cuts. There's Social Security, I can't keep track of them all. There's tariffs. A lot of these things could put us back in the inflationary environment that you're criticizing the Biden administration.
Let's step back. First of all, we have a track record against a track record that we have to pay attention to, and Americans are paying attention to it. During the Trump administration, we actually saw high growth and low inflation, And during the Biden-Harris administration, we have seen low growth and high inflation. And that comparison is real. And I would just offer that I have sat with you all in my previous life many times. Economists project lots of things. They projected that we would have a recession in the last year. We didn't. They projected that inflation would go up during the Trump administration because of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act, and it went down. I think we have to look at the real track records, and Americans feel that. And that's why even just yesterday, there was a very good poll that said that on a factor of 9, Americans trust Donald Trump with the economy and not Kamala Harris.
The thing that I don't understand about this idea of, like, let's just look at the track records of both and to compare them. The truth is, and I'm going to try to be somewhat objective about this, you may disagree, I actually think you really can't compare either of them. I think they're almost not comparable, not because of anything else except that in the middle of this whole thing is a pandemic. And prior to Trump getting in office, there was coming out of a whole period of time, and now coming out of the pandemic on the other side, that it's because if I were to go apples to apples, right, and include the pandemic, which I assume you would actually have to, you would claim you want to take out, because otherwise I tell you that, he lost all these jobs, and you'd say, well, there's a pandemic.
Well,
right?
and inflation was up in the Trump administration over Obama.
On either side, though. Remember that Remember that job growth that has been claimed by the Biden administration, a lot of that is bounce back jobs.
Well, but this is why I'm saying that this idea of saying, well, look, one view of the world was so much better than the other, or one or another was better than, it doesn't make sense in a way.
Well, do
you agree with that?
I think no.
Let's just try to be.
Yeah, no, I think it does make sense, because what we have to inject in this is the reality of on the ground.
Right,
what are people feeling?
Right, but we don't know if President Trump had been the president during the last 4 years.
But just look at the numbers. Obama was 1.4% inflation. Trump was 1.9%. So,
but real wage growth for hardworking Americans went up 15% during the Trump administration, even with the pandemic. And so we've got to get back to the reality of what people on the ground are experiencing. Have we seen real job growth? You look at jobs from before the pandemic to today, and we have seen 10 states account for 110% of the job growth from pre-pandemic to today. 10 states are carrying the U.S. economy. That is not economic prosperity for America. That is 10 states winning, a bunch of states breaking even, and a bunch of states losing. That is not economic prosperity across America. And what we have to step back and recognize is that when we unleash unprecedented inflation, and that inflation steals the hardworking money from hardworking Americans, we have to step back and say, well, who do we trust to drive this economy? And what Kamala Harris said the other day, she said there's nothing that the Biden administration has done that she would change. She's going to do the exact same thing. And therefore, we can count on the fact that inflationary pressure, job growth,
if she were to keep doing, hold on, this is interesting. If she were to keep doing exactly what the Biden administration is doing today, right, for the next 4 years, inflation would be down, the stock markets would be at all-time highs, we'd have growth that looks very much like what was under former President Trump. I'm just saying, if on the current trend line, if she just did exactly what was going on today, you would actually be very happy, I would think.
So, Andrew, I really disagree with you. Remember going into the 2016 election, everybody thought that Hillary Clinton was going to win. You thought Hillary Clinton was going to win. Everybody 100%. Except for Joe thought Hillary Clinton was going to win. Right. And at the end of the day, we were going into a recession if Hillary Clinton won. And really, because Donald Trump won, and sentiment changed materially in business prospects, what goes on in boardrooms and consumers' confidence, we in fact had an unprecedented era of real growth.
We have data coming up.
And I think that's one of the real challenges that we see now.